of owning a cafe and other heroic deeds by Beware the Tristero. Chapter 35. Intervention. Part 1. The arcade that had the tots gushing and the teens cracking their knuckles ominously was a multicolored, loud, busy nightmare. Whoever Spinner was, he wondered if he, she, or they would be just as competitive once Dobby and Tomra had reset the leaderboards, whatever that meant. Shoni, can we go on that racing car game, please? However, for a few hours, he was supposed that he could suffer it. There were lots of families and people his age roaming around, too, their faces filled with delight as they tried their hands at crane games for prizes, dancing simulators, shoot-em-ups, and slogged it out on fighting games. Again, he wasn't really sure what all the fuss was about. How did they not all have migraines? But if such things put a delighted smile on the 6-year-olds' faces, well, what was a little tinnitus and befuddlement?
You mean the one that has actual pedals, wheels, and gear sticks? Sure, that could be educational. Do you guys know how they work?
For the first hour, he'd be overseeing the younger children, and then sneakily, the teens would oversee them whilst he went away to shop for essentials.
You get
points for crashing into things anyway. Sure, it wasn't original or particularly clever, but the older children had promised to find out what Hitoshi would like for his birthday outside of the party, his favorite kind of cake, and his mother. Could it be there? And would text him ASAP. Such good kids.
Okay.
He grinned at the youngsters attached to his hands whilst they tugged him along, his sneakers padding across the color-changing floor covered in all kinds of gaming avatars, stars, and gaming logos.
Just don't expect me to have a go, alright?
Between them, it had probably taken 20 minutes to obliterate Spinner's reign across their favorite arcade RPG. They'd cleared the first 10 levels with all of the gems and 5 of the hidden bonuses. Whoever the smarmy pricks, he wouldn't be able to beat that as a single player. And now, level 11 virtually completed, Tomra couldn't take it anymore.
I can hear you thinking,
he stated bluntly, his gloved fingers striking with rapid, ruthless efficiency across the buttons. It felt so good to just hold the controller properly. His skin was feeling pretty damn good, too. He'd have to ask Sho for more of his miracle cream soon.
So what do you want to do?
Slapping and shaking him isn't going to work, is it?
Dobby sighed, his turquoise eyes scanning over the screen as their avatars smashed, slew, and vanquished the zombie horde trying to overrun the screen.
So much for my biological father's A-plus parenting ideas.
He huffed.
It sure makes it look so easy.
He grumped.
Did you know that Bakugo and Izu used to be in a really shitty place, friendship-wise?
He asked, his game character scoring trouble points with a one-bullet double kill.
What?
His partner quipped.
Sure, the Baku brat can be annoying sometimes, but I've seen them practicing their kicks together and help Eiji and Dinky with their homework together. Well, they shared the last muffin the other day, didn't they?
Yeah, well, this is how they are now.
The flame quirk user allowed, his avatar swiping up a flamethrower that one of the undead had dropped. That was more like it.
When I first met them, Izu was sad, quiet, and even more tearful than Inko-san.
He mused.
A Bakugo, forget it. He was a little rageaholic. I wanted to punt him out of the cafe, and if I'd ever met him on the street, I probably would have knocked him on his ass for good measure.
He admitted, his tone a little guilty.
Sho just talked them through their problems. You could see that the little snot was upset and struggling with the fact that Izuku was quirkless, and well, in this shitty world where hero worships everywhere, a quirkless kid doesn't get any opportunities, right?
Forget about him being a robot. Maybe Cat Dad is a benevolent spirit or something?
The great Ed chuckled.
I know that I've never met anyone like him before.
Same,
the taller acknowledged with a hum, his brows furrowing.
So, how the heck do we make him realize that?
He pushed.
I mean, he just shrugs off everything. He doesn't even celebrate his own birthday, but he's going out of his way for the kids, not for us.
He muttered.
He took me in when I had less than nothing. He's given me everything, and doesn't want anything back for it.
He sighed.
And as nice as that is, it doesn't seem right,
He huffed.
I agree with you.
Tomra offered, his nimble digits flying across the control panel, his mouth chewing a piece of gum and blowing a perfect pink bubble every so often.
And as much as I hate to admit it, I think we're going to have to take the nuclear option.
He advised. No, Dabby growled, his eyes narrowing. There has to be another way.
Look, I don't want to approach them about it either.
He acknowledged, his avatar leaping onto a rooftop to spray the grabbing, rotting zombies with a hailstorm of bullets from a machine gun he'd found in a crate.
But even though they don't act like it, they are the same age.
He shrugged.
And from what little I've heard him say about himself and what you've told me outside of the times the three of us have been together, he doesn't really have anyone, you know, other than us and the little brothers he's shown us photos of, right?
He mused. Yeah, well...
And he's a great guy. How the cafe family he's made out of us, because that's what we are, is a way better family than the one I had in a lot of ways. But even though we can try and be there for him, try to talk to him and make him feel appreciated,
he tagged on before he stopped himself.
then it'd probably be good for him to have someone he doesn't see his family to talk to about stuff, right?
But those pros are so...
Yeah, I know.
He sniggered, his partner's rolling eyes making him laugh despite himself.
However, it's them or all mites, and on top of us really not wanting to be anywhere near the symbol of peace.
He closed to sneered.
Even if he's not the smarmy bastard he seems to be. He's got shit to do all of the time, and I don't want a cat dad getting too mixed up with him and all that attention he gets. Sure wouldn't like that either, would he?
Muttering curses under his breath, the level finally cleared. The dark-haired teen typed in his preferred scream name, Hellfire, whilst the slenderer 16-year-old added his own Death Touch moniker. It was a shame that you couldn't add cuss words to these things, because this was a public space. I'll burn you, bitch! Would always be his favorite. I guess, but... he's a private guy, you know? And he's always considerate about not pushing people to say and do things. He reasoned. Those three are just so... obnoxious, he grumbled. I mean, they're okay as pros going, yeah. I don't mind them in small, really small doses, but...
If you were show,
his partner got in, level 12's loading screen, a flurry of skulls, bones, and massive beasts while they waited.
And you were trying to help someone who didn't appreciate themselves, what would you do?
Duh, fine. The flame quirk user grumbled, his head shaking. But if any of them so much as think about wanting to date him, then you and me are gonna have to give them a shovel talk, alright?
Oh? With actual shovels?
Thomas smirked, his eyes glinting mischievously.
Count me in.
Returning to the cafe, his few bags easily camouflaging Hitoshi's birthday presents, the boy had a fondness for retro board games, something he'd inherited from his father, and after playing Uno had become hungry for more. The sales clerk had been very helpful and shown him a range of different things they could enjoy. Shouta felt... Oh, getting popsicles was a really good idea, Shoni! Accomplished. He'd had a text from Rio. The new toilets and sinks had been installed. The archway had been made. He was still smoothing out the walls. And the water was back on. The faucets and cisterns were all in proper working order, and the tiling had begun. And oddly, the three local pros. Loud Cloud had sent him a picture of himself holding paint cans. Okay, he'd not asked them to buy any, but it'd be good to have some extra cans just in case. Present Mike had a range of brushes artfully shoved into his irrational hairstyle. He hoped they weren't covered in gel. And Midnight's had featured her posed with Ragdoll. Written across the admittedly cute, it looked as though they'd had a good patrol last night. Image was, we're not unsuccessful, but there's always room for one more. Winking face. Somehow we didn't think Mr. Compress would be a good candidate for that slot. However, if he came across any other people that'd make a good match, then he'd be sure to let them know. Shoni, can I ask you a question? Blinking out of his thoughts, the five of them walking up a quieter, tree-shaded street. The teens were leading the way as they quietly talked to each other, their phones in hand. The cafe owner looked down to Tots diligently trotting beside him. Of course, he replied, his dark eyes checking around the tall gray office blocks, the occasional billboard, mostly covered in All Might selling something. All Might dental floss, really? Catching his attention alongside the odd car skirting past. What an illogical expense. Why would anyone spend that kind of money learning how to drive, paying for a vehicle and insurance when the subways, buses, and trains of their country were so efficient? Irrational. How come you're so amazing?
Cocking his head, his feet having to stop because the teens have balked similarly at the question and rooted themselves to the spot a step or two before them.
Yeah.
Watching as Itoshi rolled his eyes and Izuku gave him the pre-teared look that would melt even the iciest of hearts, Shouta found himself crouching down to their level as the iris-haired child sighed and regarded his friend.
See? I told you that they were right, and he didn't know.
What? The emerald-accented tried, his little popsicle holding hand flailing. That's illogical! The boy insisted, his pout morphing into a determined, serious, adorable frown, using his own words against him. Break in!
Where did this come from?
He asked them, his head tilting further, his gaze for some reason slowly tilting up the incredibly interested-looking teenagers.
I'm just a person.
He grinned.
A little kindness and cooking nice food is hardly anything amazing, right? Whoa, Izu, don't cry.
He tried to chuckle. It was the shock more than anything else. You're not just kind and a good Shawnee.
Easy, take a breath. He said, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you.
You didn't upset him, you oblivious dope. Dabi cut in, his body moving to crouch behind the child, rubbing at his eyes, while Tomura knelt next to a quivering-lipped Itoshi. All of them were looking to him, and now, unfortunately, he felt at a loss. He didn't know what he'd done wrong. He wasn't sure how to...
We were gonna try this late, but now was as good a time as any.
His lodger huffed before picking up the boy and looking around, his eyes narrowing on a bench across the street big enough for them to sit on, its metal frame shaded by two scraggly yet leafy trees.
Come on,
he stated. Feeling his brows reach for his hairline, Shouta nodded and followed the young man's lead, with the other pair following across the quiet road behind him.
Okay, Cat Dad, this is an intervention.
The burn-scarred boy began as they sat, his form sandwiched in the middle, with the 6-year-olds sat beside him and the teens on the edge.
Intervention.
He balked.
I don't drink her.
Not that kind of intervention.
Tomura snorted, his face deadpan.
Obviously.
That I don't understand.
He admitted, the smallest children leaning into him regardless of the age.
What do you mean? I just own a cafe, and being with you guys is my privilege for however long you want me around.
He reminded.
It's that!
The clearly exasperated, verging on flustered teenager tried, his right hand gesturing at, all of him.
Look, Sho, it's about time someone told you the truth, man. That I'm sullen, strange, and emotionally obtuse.
He ventured mildly, a wide grin plucking his lips.
Now who's being oblivious?
He chuckled because, duh.
How to by amazing? You mean that I'm working too hard? I don't mean to be always rushing around, but I like hard work, and sometimes I'm sorry if I get a little caught up in it. I don't mean to worry or upset you by doing that, and I'll try to be more understanding if...
Oh my fucking god!
He heard the decay quirk user mutter, whilst Izuku, who just about started to settle, began to look heartbroken again. What the hell was going on?
Shoni?
Turning his attention to Hitoshi, whilst Dabi looked as though he was just managing to contain a rant or a conniption, who was regarding him with a look far too intense for a boy of his years.
You are not an ordinary person,
he stated, his little hands balling into fists.
And to hear you not realize that you're so much more than that it's really wrong,
he told him flatly before pointing to Izuku. He has never had a dad, he continued.
Not until you came along and showed him what that was like.
But he hadn't.
You are not related to any of us. There was no logical reason for you to give me and Davini a home. There was no logical reason for you to get Izu and Kacha talking again, or teach Eiji and Denki when their school teachers had given up, or help Sui-chan, and accept herself.
He furthered hotly. There was a reason, though. He'd been able to help. He wanted to help. He'd taken college courses to...
Or feed Ocha-chan and her family for free because they're hungry, or make Tomuni feel better about his quirk, and be a parent to all of us when you're not that much older than they are, he continued, his hand gesturing at the nodding teens. You did all of that because you're amazing, he carried on, and we all love you.
He pushed that tear-stained face, shoving it to his side, an action that was mimicked by his young friend who was nodding into his t-shirt vigorously.
Dolshi, it's wrong that you don't love yourself as much as we love you, Shoni.
Came another muffled argument before with a sniff. The purple-haired thought pulled away and looked up at him, his red-rimmed eyes filled with conviction.
So I'm gonna keep telling you how amazing you are until you see it.
Me too! The freckled thought nodded. And us. The teens solidified, their hands reaching for his shoulders and squeezing them.
So stop being so dense and taking yourself for granted. Your crazy self-less moron of a not-so-old guy.
Arriving back in Japan, his private valet bowing at him whilst he walked down the steps of his small business jet, Shigaraki cast a careful eye around the mostly quiet airstrip whilst approaching his preferred deep maroon Bentley Musari, the smartly dressed chauffeur opening the passenger door for him as he slipped inside. It felt good to be home. Sinking into the plush, sumptuous cream leather interior with a pleased sigh, he took the flute of champagne that awaited him in the broad, warm mist before tapping onto the touchscreen that protruded from a hard light projector which shimmered down from the car's ceiling. As the engine purred to life, the wheels easily pulling them towards the exit, the crime lord tapped Kurogiri's icon and smiled when the call was picked up within his seconds.
Sensei.
The first nomu of his kind, an ingenious amalgamation of a clone crafted from a wayward, slightly deranged dolt he'd taken in to look after, and several blood-based quirks Garaki had managed to sample from his legitimate profession as a doctor, answered primly with a bow.
Welcome home, sir.
Thank you, he grinned out, his flute-free hand reaching for a cigar in his breast pocket, one of the many powers he'd acquired effortlessly, igniting it as after he'd slid it between his perfect white marbled teeth.
How is my boy doing, He is progressing at speed through his courses, and his tutors have reported an increase in efficiency and overall academic proficiency.
The elegantly dressed, shadow-encrusted male returned in kind, the screen he was observing flashing up with the reports that the teachers he'd employed had sent through alongside Tomura's assessment scores.
Excellent,
he mused, a puff of thick, creamy smoke floating from his wildly grinning maw, his pale, insipid eyes alight with pleasure.
And you're certain it's this Derby, Aizawa Shouta, and their little establishment which has caused such a positive change in our dear recruits? Most certainly, sir, the other assured. I believe that he has become more efficient in his studies, so that he may return to the Noronico Cafe for the greater part of the day and evening, he continued before the poisonous lemon of his eyes narrowed a touch. He has stayed there overnight on a few occasions.
Humming, a swallow of champagne sliding down his throat, Shigaraki let out a chuckle.
My, he said. Well, I see no harm in allowing him to enjoy himself. Young men should, shouldn't they? He mused before he checked his schedule. Continue to observe him from a distance, he advised. And, let's say mid-July? I think I'll go there myself for a visit. He nodded. Yes, we must get Gigantomakia settled in first, and then there's that haughty Yakuza brat to deal with. He hummed. Set a date for me, would you? He added conversationally after another puff of acrid, sickly sweet vapour rolled up and out of him. Let's say somewhere around the 15th?